Hi, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Alex Ross. I'm the project manager for grassroots engagement here at EDF Action, the advocacy partner of the Environmental Defense Fund. We're so excited to talk about the recently updated standards from the Environmental Protection Agency and their role in protecting our climate, health, and economy. On April 25th, the EPA released several new standards that work together to really help us reach our most ambitious climate goals and really keep our communities strong and healthy. And with these standards, we'll tackle the two largest sources of climate pollution in our country, which include transportation and fossil fuel power plants. Thank you to all the EDF Action members who took the time to submit comments on these rules over the last 2 years. We're so grateful that you are here in this movement with us. It's because of your efforts that we're able to celebrate today. We have some wonderful EDF experts speaking with us tonight to help us dig a little bit deeper into what some of these regulations mean and kind of break down how it impacts our daily lives. And I'm sure we're going to have lots of questions. So we'll have some time at the end to answer those, but please feel free to submit your questions in the comments wherever you're watching, whether you're on Facebook, X, or YouTube. We'll see your comments on our side. So with that, I'll welcome all of our panelists. And why don't we start with Vicki Patton. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Alex. Thanks so much. Vicki Patton. I serve as General Counsel at Environmental Defense Fund, and wonderful to be with you today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And then Noha Hagag.
Thanks so much for having us, Alex. My name is Noha Hagag. I'm an environmental senior attorney over at Environmental Defense Fund, focusing on the clean power sector.
Awesome. Hi, Survi.
Hi, I'm Survi Sarang. I'm also a senior attorney at EDF, where I work on the clean power team, working to reduce pollution from the power sector.
Awesome. And finally, Ellen, welcome.
Thanks, Alex. Hi, everyone. My name is Ellen Robo, and I am a manager on our transportation and clean air policy team, working on transportation analytics.
Awesome. Sounds like we have a great lineup. So I know we called this conversation Celebrating Climate Progress. So Vicki, can you tell us a little bit about what we are celebrating today?
Well, I just want to underscore the gratitude, Alex, the gratitude to colleagues at Environmental Defense Fund who worked really hard on these actions, the leadership of the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA Administrator Michael Regan, the Biden administration, and all of the people who are on this conversation and beyond who raised their voices and made this progress possible. This is important progress. We are talking about smokestacks and tailpipes, the two single largest sources of climate destabilizing pollution in our country, and one of the single largest sources of climate destabilizing pollution in the world. So taking a big step forward and tackling that climate pollution matters. It matters enormously in moving towards safer climate. Those sources of contaminants, those smokestacks, those tailpipes, they also release a number of very serious additional airborne contaminants, deadly particles, smog-forming contaminants, toxics that have enormous adverse impacts on people's lives. So the actions that have been taken here, thanks to all of you, not only help us take a big step forward in making climate progress and moving towards climate safety, they will also ensure that every single day people can live healthier, longer lives, millions of people, and including communities that have been suffering from the heavy burden of air pollution for far too long. So huge thanks to everyone. And, we've got a lot to fight for here. Thank you.
Absolutely. So it sounds like we're talking about, a lot of the things that people deal with every single day, their cars, getting to and from work, and then deliveries from heavy and light freight, as well as really the harmful pollution from these smokestacks. So I feel like the best way to probably tackle this is to take them one by one. So why don't we start with the cars standards? Ellen, can you tell us a little bit more about the clean car and trucks standards?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Alex. So at the end of March, EPA finalized two really great standards for one is for the light and medium duty vehicles. So those are your passenger vehicles and things like Amazon delivery, the like small delivery van. So those are in the light and medium duty standards. And those are multi-pollutant standards. So it's both greenhouse gas emissions from vehicles as well as really harmful soot pollution that comes out of tailpipes. Um, and then additionally, EPA finalized standards for heavy duty trucks and buses. So those are, the semi trucks on the highway, school buses, moving trucks, all sorts of those big vehicles that are really polluting. And so these standards they start in model year 2027, so they don't start for a few years. And then they grow stronger through 2032. And so these standards, are really going to do a lot to reduce the climate pollution from transportation is the number one source of climate destabilizing pollution, as Vicky calls it correctly. In the U.S., more than a quarter of the greenhouse gases that are emitted in the U.S. And so these two standards are really going to do a lot.
Thank you for that overview. Yeah, that sounds like we're going to get a lot of progress in a very short amount of time, which is really great for just all of our health and our communities. So thank you. Serby, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about the clean power plant standards.
Yeah, I'm gonna hand it off to Noha to get us started, and then I'll jump in.
For sure.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Serby. And yes, we'll do. So in April, EPA finalized standards limiting carbon pollution from existing coal plants and new gas plants. And the rules include subcategories for each sorts, placing the most stringent limits on plants that plan to run more often or retire later. So for existing coal, for example, the later the coal plant plans to retire, so at this point, the latest would be 2039, they get the most stringent emissions limits. And those plants need to abide by a standard that is equivalent to 90% carbon capture and sequestration, also referred to as CCS. For coal plants that decide to retire between 2032 or 2039, they will need to abide by a standard that is equivalent to co-firing 40% natural gas. And for coal plants that plan to retire by 2032, they do not need to install controls. And for new gas, similar system. So if they operate more often, they have a more stringent limit applied to them. So the most stringent limit applies to new gas plants that operate above a 40% capacity factor. And that is also a standard based on CCS. For intermediate plants, the 20 to 40% capacity factor, that is based on running most efficiently or state-of-the-art thermal efficiency. And for peaker plants or capacity factor of less than 20%, it is based on use of lower emitting fuels. So overall, these rules are going to result in much needed carbon reductions and protections for public health. As Vicky stated before, the power sector is one of the largest GHG emitters in the US, emitting a quarter of GHG pollution domestically. And with that, there are also other standards that EPA is going to issue for the power sector in the future, and also issued back in April. So I will pass it to Serby to cover those.
Yeah, thanks so much, Noha. So while there is a lot to celebrate and our focus today is on the climate rules that EPA promulgated, we also just wanted to lift up a suite of actions that EPA took to address pollution from power plants, which goes beyond just air pollution and beyond climate pollution. And so one really important action EPA took is to strengthen the mercury and air toxic standards for coal-fired power plants. And this will result in significantly reduced emission limits for mercury and other toxic metals like nickel, arsenic, and lead from coal-fired power plants. But EPA also took additional actions. They strengthened standards for wastewater pollution from coal plants. And so coal plants use large amounts of water, and often that water can be contaminated and leak into drinking water, groundwater, and be very harmful. And so EPA strengthened those standards, and they've also taken action to address pollution from coal ash. And so we have protections from our land, air, and water from power plant pollution, which is very exciting. And I also wanted to just lift up, Noha talked about the power plant standards for existing coal and new gas plants, but EPA is not done with the work yet. They are also going to be taking action to promulgate carbon standards for existing gas-fired power plants, and also have announced that they are going to be taking a multi-pollutant approach and also promulgating regulations for other pollution from gas plants, including pollution that has really more localized health impacts, and that is really important to address.
Absolutely. It sounds like the EPA has just been extremely thorough in these new regulations to make sure that we have clean air, clean water, and I think sustainable energy is these are all huge factors that contribute to our quality of life. And it's so great to see all this progress. And just reminding that comes from all of us, right? It comes from all the EDF Action members who are watching. And it's so awesome to see all our work sort of come to fruition. So I'm curious, from more of a higher level view, if we could talk about where the EPA actually gets their authority to even pass these rules in the first place. Vicki, could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. We've had the important sort of foundational bipartisan Clean Air Act in place for generations that really creates not only the authority, but the responsibility for the Environmental Protection Agency to take action anchored in science and available technologies to protect the millions of people all across our country who are afflicted by all forms of air pollution. And that includes climate pollution, that includes, smog-forming nitrogen oxides, all of the contaminants that are emitted into our air and put people at risk. We have this law because people fought to make it happen, and we also have this law strengthened and reinforced when Congress adopted the Inflation Reduction Act in August of 2022. It did a couple of really important things, and that is it made very significant investments in clean solutions. That creates kind of this virtuous cycle because those clean solutions are now the least cost solutions for tackling these harmful contaminants. And so we're at this place in our country where we can transition to these zero emitting solutions that reduce a suite of very harmful contaminants. These solutions oftentimes save people money. They put money back in people's pockets. If you think about not having to pay to pump your car over and over again at, extensive, costly amounts. If you think about the fact that we have clean power that is cheaper than fossil-based power, that's just a great thing for our country. So the Inflation Reduction Act, which also came from everyone here stepping in and raising their voices, made these investments that changed the cost structure of those clean solutions, enabling EPA to be more ambitious. And one of the other things that the Inflation Reduction Act did is it really reinforced EPA's responsibility to take action to protect the public health and the environment from harmful contaminants. One of the first amendments to the Clean Air Act in a long time. And so there's just so much good that people have done by engaging to raise their voices and to help, take some big steps forward, and including really strengthening the foundational authority and the responsibility of the Environmental Protection Agency to take action here.
Great. I think that context is so important, especially thinking about, the work that we do today is built on the environmental movement that came before us, and that this work kind of is always continuous, right? We're not going to stop until we have the things we want for our climate and for our communities. So thank you for providing that background. I think that's really important. I want to dive a little bit into how these rules kind of work together to really improve public health and climate resiliency. I know that's kind of a hot topic right now. So Ellen, I'd love to start again with cars and trucks and how they will really work to improve public health and climate resiliency.
Yeah, absolutely. So both of the vehicle standards do a lot for both for climate, for mitigating climate change, as well as improving health. And so just some numbers, through 2055, the two standards together will reduce will reduce the emission of 8 billion metric tons of greenhouse gas pollution, which is more than the U.S. produces in a year. And additionally, will provide just enormous public health benefits. So, like I mentioned, the Clean Car Standards has this soot standard, and it is the strongest soot PM particulate matter standard in the U.S. So it's stronger than California standard, and it's really utilizing the available technology and bringing our vehicles up, to similar levels that are required in Europe and other parts of the world. And so these are really going to make a huge difference for communities across the country that have, everyone has a road near them, but some communities are really negatively impacted by the transportation sector because they're along freeways or near, really big transportation hubs. And then for climate resiliency, I think the first thing we all, the most important thing is to reduce the emissions that we're creating. That, is going to do more than any sort of resiliency. It's the first thing we need to do. Resiliency is absolutely also important. And I guess these standards don't necessarily directly impact resiliency, though there have been a number of stories of people who use, cleaner vehicles like electric vehicles to power their homes in the event of a big storm where they lose power. And so that is a potential, side benefit to these standards. And I should say, I think I meant to mention this earlier, that these standards, like many of the standards that EPA does, are performance-based. So manufacturers or power producers, and on the side of, for the power plant rules, can decide how they best want to meet the emission standard. So EPA sets a standard, and manufacturers can choose how they want to meet that standard using any mix of technologies available to them. And so in the case of vehicles, that's, improving, the types of gasoline engines, so like hybrids or plug-in hybrids or battery electric vehicles. All of those are available for manufacturers, which is really exciting because it really increases consumers' choice, so they can pick the right vehicle for them.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. I think it's so great that EPA has really worked to identify what the latest in technology and technological advancements are, so that they're not just making these decisions in a bubble. They're informed by the industry that's going to be most directly impacted by these standards. Serbi or Noha, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about sort of the public health benefits of these power plant standards.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would love to also hit on the climate and public health benefits as well here. And just want to provide a little bit of context that since 1980, there have been 376 weather and climate disasters costing more than $1 billion. And a quarter of those have happened in the past 5 years alone. So these carbon reductions are just urgently needed. So as we've previously said, fossil fuel-fired power plants are responsible for about a quarter of the nation's total climate pollution. And in addition to exacerbating the frequency and severity of climate disasters, they release lethal particles, smog-forming nitrogen oxides, toxic air pollutants like mercury, chromium, arsenic, and nickel. And reducing that smokestack pollution is just crucially important to preventing further climate change impacts and protecting public health. So these carbon standards in particular for new gas and existing coal are projected to reduce 1.38 billion metric tons of CO2 through 2047, along with tens of thousands of tons of co-pollutants such as particulate matter and ozone. When we convert these emissions into cost between 2024 and 2047, the EPA projects a net climate and health benefit of up to $370 billion, which is an annualized net benefit of $20 billion per year. So overall, these standards are just urgently needed, again, to further protect public health, prevent further climate harms. And I'll pass it to Surabhi to also discuss other rules that are going to work in tandem with these rules to further protect the public.
Yeah, thank you so much, Noha. And yeah, I just wanted to lift up the importance of, communities who are very vulnerable to the impacts of climate change are also often most vulnerable to the kind of localized toxic pollution from our power sector and power plants. And so it's really important to think holistically and about the whole suite of pollution, which EPA has done through the suite of standards that they have promulgated. And the mercury and air toxic standard, for example, is tightening the standard for toxic metals like nickel, lead, and arsenic by 67%. It's also tightening the mercury standard for lignite coal plants, which are some of the dirtiest and the highest mercury emitting plants, by 70%. It's also requiring continuous emissions monitoring, and that will bring increased data about pollution to communities and also allow coal plant operators to make sure their pollution equipment is operating as expected and they can make immediate adjustments to address any issues. EPA expects this rule to reduce the risk of fatal heart attacks, cancer, developmental delays in children who are especially vulnerable to the impacts of these pollutants. And mercury is also a common route of consumption for humans is through fish. And so communities that are regular consumers of fish, like certain native communities, will especially experience benefits from the reductions. And EPA also projects carbon dioxide emissions as a result of the rule, also kind of showcasing that these rules can have climate and public health benefits together. And yeah, maybe I'll just stop there.
Great. No, I think that's wonderful. And what I keep coming back to, I mean, in addition to all these great benefits for our public health and for our climate, it's also something like it's just very smart business sense and really good for our economy to be investing in these technologies and in these, in really meeting these regulations. But I know we've been getting a lot of different messages. I don't know if you guys have seen some of the YouTube ads lately, but I know the fossil fuel industry has spent millions of dollars to try to push disinformation about what these regulations do. I think I even heard someone call it an EPA vehicle ban, right? Can you all tell us a little bit more about sort of what is the truth here and how can we kind of counter some of these messages that we keep hearing?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. The truth is that these right now in our country, because of the combination of the investments under the Inflation Reduction Act and these standards, we're making historic progress in investing in manufacturing. It's a manufacturing renaissance that is creating thousands and thousands of jobs in states all across the country, and in communities that have been left behind and are seeing, tremendous investments in these clean solutions. And all of these standards are carefully designed to be technology neutral, performance-based standards. It is a disservice. It is a misrepresentation to suggest in any way, shape, or form that this is banning the choice that people have to choose a vehicle. Vehicles will be cleaner. They will be cleaner, and people will be able to choose an array of cleaner vehicles. And those cleaner vehicles will save them money. And so people will also have more choices because, every month that passes, manufacturers are announcing more and more array of different forms of cleaner vehicles. at a time where those same manufacturers are investing in, huge job creation opportunities in red, purple, and blue states all across our nation. So it is those same forces that are misleading people are also trying to obstruct these standards from being like fully beneficial. And I'd like to say that climate denialism is behind us, but there are very powerful forces that are focused on obstructing climate progress. And we need everyone's help in pushing back. We need everyone's help in raising your voices and talking about the clear and present danger of climate change and the solutions that are at hand that have tremendous benefits for people's lives. And I would just, again, I'd like to say that that is behind us. It is not behind us. And, we see it, Serby and Noha and Ellen, Alex and you, we all see it every day in the work we do. And we need all hands on deck to push back.
Absolutely. Anyone else want to add on to that? That was a really great answer. Perfect. All right. Couldn't agree more. So looking forward, or even kind of looking at, the rules that we have, were they as strong as we had hoped for? And really kind of what's the next step now that they have sort of been finalized? Noha and Serby, you want to kick this one off?
Yeah, thanks so much, Alex. Yeah, no, it's absolutely important to have these carbon standards, which are anchored both in science and law, and are going to help achieve our goal of preventing climate harms and protecting public health. In addition, it's incredibly important to strengthen standards for other pollutants from the power sector, including air toxics. And I will pass it to Serby to talk a little bit more about this multi-pollutant strategy.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, as Noah mentioned, there's still work to be done. And EPA knows this. And so in finalizing the climate rule for power plants, they did not finalize yet a carbon standard for existing gas plants, as I mentioned. And that is, on the top of the list for EPA. They're actively working on developing that standard. And that's a process that we are, very excited to advocate in and for a strong carbon standard for existing plants. And as I mentioned, EPA is also taking a multi-pollutant approach. And so alongside that carbon standard, they are also looking at reviewing criteria air pollutant standards for new gas plants. And that's probably going to be focused particularly on nitrous oxide or NOx. And also they will be looking at reviewing the limits for hazardous air pollutants from existing and new gas plants. And this is an array of really toxic pollutants that have, really serious health impacts, such as formaldehyde, benzene, hexane, and many others. And so EPA has now announced their intention to kind of look at this suite of rules, and that process will be ongoing. And we just submitted comments to EPA on this effort, and we'll be looking ahead to seeing these rules come through as well.
It's great to hear. Ellen, you want to tell us a little bit more about, these car and truck standards versus what we might have hoped for?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think these are such an important step, and but the work isn't done yet. The work isn't done until we get the emissions down to zero. But these, I mean, I think we're really happy with where as a whole the standards ended up, but it doesn't mean we're done. And so EPA also definitely recognizes this, and they have done a lot besides the standards to push ahead clean technologies through grant programs they have and things like, and other actions they've taken. And so I think the work, isn't done yet, but we're certainly, really proud of the work that has gotten us to the point, that we're at right now.
Absolutely. Awesome. And it's just so amazing to see the fruits of our labor finally come. So really, I'm curious, we talked a little bit about what's coming next for these standards. And even though, the EPA has provided plenty of time for industries to, not only comply with these standards, but also to leave their own comments, my understanding is that there's already some court cases challenging some of these rules at the state level. There's already been, some congressional actions as well. And Donald Trump has pledged to undo all of it or if he's elected. So what can we do to really make sure that these standards stick? And I'll open that up for anyone.
In everything that we do, we are trying to really create the inevitability of the progress. And, we've talked about here just the benefits that these clean solutions have for people's lives. And with those benefits, it makes it really creates momentum. It creates a sense of progress that is enduring, because if you have clean power, if you have a clean vehicle that is saving your family money, that is ensuring that your children can breathe cleaner, healthier air, and have a shot at living a life free from the scourge of air pollution, that creates a lot of benefit and momentum. And we all need to sort of recognize that there are a lot of very powerful forces that would like to block this progress, to slow this progress, and we need everyone's help to do that. Right now, we're in litigation, Alex, in a number of cases where there are Republican state attorneys general. There are fossil fuel interests doing all they can to disrupt progress. Those Republican state attorney generals are using, taxpayer dollars to try to block clean standards that are creating cost savings, clean air, and jobs in their own states. And so, we've got to figure out a way to sort of have that conversation and how problematic that is. And there are some fossil fuel interests who are investing very, very heavily and doing all they can to slow this progress. And so we need to all continue to, roll up our sleeves and work together in every possible way we can to create that inevitability and to ensure that this progress continues. And it's up to each of us, and we can all make a difference. Think of the difference we all made working together to get to here. And, we wake up the next morning and we keep at it. It's we have to just keep at it. This is a big challenge, and we're making important progress when we all work together.
Absolutely. It's always a marathon and never a sprint, is what I like to tell folks. And I think that is such a perfect segue into our next segment. Being such a critical time really for us to take action, I wanted to invite EDF Action Organizer Andrew Turner onto the call with us to share a little bit about what our most recent action is and get folks involved.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, it's good to see so many members here tonight, ready to take action and make change across our nation and our entire world. My name is Andrew Turner. My pronouns are he, him, and I am the EDF Action Organizer on the ground in the Great Granite State here in New Hampshire. And I wanted to take just a couple of minutes of your time to ask you to help with a very important cause tonight. EDF Action has championed legislation fighting for our environment and the average American since our program's inception. And from the Inflation Reduction Act to the major accomplishments in the recent Farm Bill, we've continued that fight until today. With decisive action like the new EPA rules and regulations we're learning about tonight, we're starting to move in the right direction on climate change as a nation. However, because that's not in the interests of a few private companies, many in Congress are now pushing to roll back or even repeal many of these accomplishments that we have achieved under the current administration. Unfortunately, this hard work can be nullified. These accomplishments are not set in stone. But if we speak up, like we were just talking about, and we work together, we can actually make sure that they stay actionable and accomplishable. That should be easily done by signing our latest petition, which is actually a call to Congress to defend our climate and defend the actions that we've taken. You'll be able to find a link either in chat or at the bottom of the screen. Yep, there you go. where you can follow and sign that petition, which I urge you to do. It takes 30 seconds, and it's just a quick way to make sure that your congressperson is told about how you feel about this and that they hear your voice among a lot of other voices that are going in their ears. So that being said, one last thing before you go, I also want you to encourage you to check out our Mobilize page. There you can find not only national events like this one, but local events in your state and region run by organizers just like me that are on the ground working to get the actions done. So I wanted to thank you so much. I hope you look forward to the Q&A session, and have a great night.
Thanks, Andrew. Really appreciate it. And with that, yeah, we'll move into our Q&A. Reminder, you can ask any questions in the comments of wherever you're watching, and then we'll be able to see them on our end. Welcome back to our lovely panelists. And while we're sort of waiting for questions to come in, one of the ones I think that came up for me is really, what can we do to really make sure that our local communities are taking advantage of some of these benefits? I think especially from the IRA. Like which of my local officials should I be contacting to ask about some of this funding that we've talked about tonight?
Well, just a couple of thoughts, and please jump in here. We have a terrific tool that we've created with partners at the Sabin Center for Climate Change Law called the IRA Tracker. And it's just a great resource that I encourage everyone to check out, where you can take a look at sort of all of the resources that are available and also lift that up and highlight that for local officials. There's so many opportunities. We created the tracker with partners so that everyone could have access to the information they need to take full advantage of those opportunities. And Ellen can say a little bit more about some of the sort of important sort of opportunities that exist for people who are purchasing new or used zero emitting vehicles. And the good news about that is, as of January, those discounts, those tax credits are available kind of at the time of purchase. So over to you, Ellen.
Yeah, thanks, Vicki. There are really generous tax credits in the IRA for clean for electric vehicles. For new vehicles, buyers can get up to $7,500 for a new vehicle, and it's for certain models. And we can drop into the chat, I'm assuming the more technologically savvy folks on this call, I'll drop it in the chat. The resource to find which vehicles qualify, and then additionally, really excitingly, this is a new component from the IRA, is for used vehicles, and so purchasers can get up to $4,000 for a used vehicle, for a used electric vehicle now, which really will hopefully make, and is already making, electric vehicles more accessible to everyone, because many people don't buy new vehicles. That's not in their price range, and so they are now also able to access these tax credits.
Awesome. Yeah, I know that's something that I've been thinking about as I'm looking at switching to electric. A used vehicle might be the best route for me. So definitely looking forward to taking advantage of some of those credits. Let's see if we have any other questions in the chat. I don't see any, but I would love if folks maybe want to just kind of share some final thoughts before we sign off. I would just love to hear from each one of you before we close out for the night. Vicki, do you want to start?
Sure. I just want to again just anchor this conversation in gratitude. You know, the progress that has been made over the last few years in tackling the climate crisis and advancing justice and equity is really unlike any that's happened before in the time that I've worked on these issues. And I've worked on them for a couple of years, and it's it's because of all of you. It's because of my colleagues at Environmental Defense Fund who work with such diligence and integrity. It's because of partners in the environmental justice community, community-based organizations, and their leadership and their voices. It's because of allies in the environmental community, public health community, and it's because of all of the people who took the time to be here today. And we can make a difference, and we can make important science-based climate progress that advances equity and justice for all communities and all people. And the progress over the last couple of years demonstrates that. It's really unlike any that I've had the privilege of being a part of. And with all of you, I'm really, looking forward to continuing to build on that foundation. It is an important and strong foundation because of all of you. And we do what we always do, is we wake up the next day and we say, we want to continue to fight for more. And so that's exactly where we're at, thanks to all of you. So thanks, Alex.
Awesome. Thank you. We did get a question in that I want to bring up. Trey had mentioned, cobalt mining sort of in the Congo, and the environmental justice issues around that, especially as we need, increased critical minerals for electric vehicles. Ellen, I'm wondering if you could tell us maybe a little bit more about thoughts about addressing these issues, or maybe how the industry is addressing this issue.
Absolutely. And then others, please jump in if you have additional thoughts. So I think it is crucial that we build a, sustainable, ethical supply chain for all of the components that we need to build a clean, green economy. And so that includes the critical minerals that are in batteries. And I think this is a big concern for folks. And there are a lot of battery chemistries that don't require cobalt, or require a lot less cobalt, that are definitely an option for ensuring that the minerals and components that are being incorporated into the vehicles are sustainable and ethical. So one of those is lithium iron, LFP, lithium iron phosphate batteries, which have no cobalt. And then there's also ones, like I said, that have lower levels of cobalt. And I think there's a lot of, improvement in general, sort of R&D and technology around battery chemistries and batteries themselves. I think another really crucial part of the transition is to make sure we start from the beginning recycling and building a framework to recycle the components in batteries. They are, sort of, you burn gasoline, that gasoline is gone forever. Or I guess not really, it's in the air with us forever, but not really usable. But the components in batteries can be recycled and reused. And so that also reduces the requirement of the amount of minerals. And so that's good on a lot of levels, but also to make sure we are minimizing the footprint that we can have. But I think ensuring that materials that companies are acquiring are done ethically, I think is something that's really important, and that a number of groups are working on.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Awesome. Any other final thoughts to share before we log off? All right, well, I will just say that is all the time we have for tonight. Thank you, Vicky, Noha, Serbi, Ellen, so much for this conversation. I realize, climate progress is won in 100 different ways, and sometimes these efforts will really take years to pay off. But I think that persistence is what's going to get us through to the future that we want. And thank you again to all the EDF Action members who joined us tonight, who took action on these regulations, and who continue to take action every single day. Stay tuned for our next event coming soon about focusing more on climate resiliency and building that one community at a time. Thank you for helping ensure a vital Earth for everyone.